He sat alone on a park bench on Christmas Eve, wealthy beyond imagination, yet utterly forgotten. No wife, no children who cared, only silence and falling snow. Then a little girl with golden curls and a paper star approached him with a question no one had asked in years. "Would you like to have Christmas dinner with us?" She had no idea who he was. What began as a simple invitation soon became a miracle no one could have predicted. The city glowed that night. Strings of lights wrapped. Around lampposts, laughter spilled from cafes, and the air carried the sweet, smoky scent of roasted chestnuts. But for Henry Whitmore, none of it mattered. Dressed in a charcoal coat and polished leather shoes, he sat on a weathered bench near Boston Common, motionless, his hands resting on a cane his late wife had once carved for him. Henry was in his 70s now, sharp-minded, impeccably mannered, and richer than most men could dream. Yet wealth was a hollow comfort when the seat beside him had been empty for a year. The previous Christmas he had lost Margaret, his wife of 50 years, the only true warmth in his gilded world. Since her passing, the vast halls of his Beacon Hill mansion had echoed with silence. His grown children, distant and disinterested, rarely called, too busy, too different. As the world around him celebrated, Henry sat watching life continue without him. Snowflakes began to drift downward, soft and steady. With a sigh, he adjusted his scarf. That's when he heard it, small footsteps crunching through the snow. A little girl stood before him, bundled in a worn red coat, golden curls peeking out from beneath her knitted hat. She couldn't have been older than 5. Her wide blue eyes shimmered with a kindness that seemed far too great for someone so small. "Sir," she said sweetly, "are you having Christmas dinner all by yourself?" Henry blinked, startled. "My mommy says nobody should be alone on Christmas. Would you like to come have dinner with us?" She extended a mittened hand as if offering magic. He stared at her, this tiny stranger, this force of nature. "And what's your name, little one?" "I'm Ellie," she answered with a smile. "We live right there behind the bakery with the candy canes in the window." She tugged gently at his hand, and somehow he let her. Together they walked down the narrow street, an old man and a child, steps uneven, yet perfectly matched. When, they reached a small apartment above a corner grocery store, Ellie beamed. "We're here." Before she could knock, the door opened. A woman in her late 20s, cheeks flushed from cooking, froze at the sight of Henry. Surprise, hesitation, and quiet welcome flickered across her face. "Mommy, this is the man I told you about," Ellie announced proudly. "He was all alone." Henry inclined his head politely. "I hope I'm not intruding." Then a man appeared, drying his hands on a towel. He stopped short at the sight of Henry, not from suspicion but recognition. After a pause, he spoke. "I'm David, Ellie's father. Please come in." The apartment was modest but brimming with warmth. Rosemary and roasted potatoes perfumed the air. A small table stood set with mismatched plates and a single flickering candle. In the window, a tiny artificial tree blinked with paper stars and tufts of cotton snow. Henry lowered himself into a chair, his eyes drawn to the details of family life. The drawings taped to the fridge, toys tucked in corners, slippers waiting by the heater. Ellie sat across from him, cheeks glowing with pride. "This is your seat now." They ate slowly. The food wasn't lavish, but Henry hadn't tasted anything so rich in years, not because of flavor, but because it was shared. Later, as Ellie played nearby, David sat across from Henry, the air thick with unspoken weight. "You remind me of someone," David said at last. Henry lifted his eyes. "My father. He was wealthy too, but proud, cold. When I chose love over legacy, he shut the door. Ellie's never met her grandfather." Henry's hand stilled over his teacup. "And you haven't spoken since?" David shook his head. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like to have a father who valued people over pride. His voice carried no accusation, only quiet truth. Henry glanced at Ellie, who was bent over her crayons drawing stars. Something shifted inside. Him, a crack in the ice. I had children, he admitted softly. But after Margaret passed, they stopped visiting. I suppose I taught them more about wealth than love. David's gaze softened. You're here now? That counts. When dinner ended and Henry rose to leave, Ellie ran to the door and hugged him tightly. Will you come again? She whispered. His voice trembled. If I'm welcome? You always have a seat here, she said. And so he returned. Sometimes with books, sometimes with groceries, often with small gifts for Ellie, a snow globe, a watercolor set. He laughed more. He listened more. For the first time in years, he felt needed. David, too, began to warm to him. They worked side by side on small repairs, speaking of life, loss, and fatherhood. One afternoon, while fixing a leaky pipe, David murmured, I never thought I'd get a second chance at having a dad. Henry said nothing. He only patted his shoulder and smiled. Another Christmas Eve arrived, this time with snow falling gently against the apartment windows. Inside, laughter filled the room. 3 chairs now circled the table, and Henry's coat hung by the door. Ellie danced in her green velvet dress, humming carols. After dinner, she tugged his hand toward the tree. Close your eyes. When he opened them, she held out a folded paper star, golden and imperfect, with words scribbled in crayon. For Grandpa Henry. His eyes filled. He looked at David and Rachel, emotion rising like a tide. Then he pulled out his leather wallet. From it, he unfolded a worn photograph. A smiling woman, eyes alight with warmth and mischief, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. This was Margaret, Henry whispered to Ellie. My wife. She passed 2 Christmases ago. I never showed you because I wasn't ready. Ellie studied the photo, her small hand reaching out. That's her, she breathed. Henry frowned. You've seen her? Ellie nodded slowly. She came to me in a dream. She sat beside me and said, There's an old man sitting on a bench all alone. No one should be alone on Christmas Eve. Henry's breath caught. She told me I was an angel, that angels protect lonely people. She said even though she was gone, you didn't have to be alone. That you needed someone to remind you that love doesn't leave when people do. Tears streamed down Henry's face. David and Rachel stood silent in the doorway, listening. Ellie traced the photo with her finger. She smiled just like this. I didn't know her name, but I remembered her heart. Henry clutched the photo to his chest, trembling. She saw me. Even now, she saw how lost I was. And she sent you. Ellie leaned against him, sleepy and certain. She said you were waiting for a family. I think you found us. Henry looked. Around, the warmth in David's eyes, Rachel's hand pressed to her chest, Ellie's faith shining brighter than the Christmas tree. His voice broke. Yes, I found you. Maybe Margaret saw I was lonely and sent me an angel, and that angel led me here. A year later, Henry passed peacefully in his sleep. When his lawyer arrived at the Monroe's apartment, he carried a letter and a will. Henry had left everything, his estate, his fortune, his trust funds, to Ellie Monroe, to the girl who found me in the cold and gave me warmth. You reminded me what it means to be human. This is not a reward. It's a thank you. Love, Grandpa Henry. Tears streamed down Rachel's face as Ellie clutched the letter to her chest, and in that moment, they knew the truth. Home is not built from walls or wealth, but from hearts willing to open their door. And sometimes, a single act of kindness can change everything. So tell me, If a simple invitation could change someone's life, would you have stopped to invite that lonely old man to Christmas dinner?